Okay, so welcome to day two. This is our introductory lecture for our unit on climate change. And just before I begin, a quick word about the lectures and how they're posted. It turns out that it's kind of difficult for me to do closed captions on the lectures that are posted directly in Canvas. So if you would like to watch these lectures with subtitles, use the links to the lectures that are posted on YouTube. There you can turn on the closed captioning and get subtitles for the lectures. Okay, so this lecture, like I said, is an introductory lecture for our climate change unit. So we're not going to get into much of the issues in this lecture. That will start in the next posted lecture on Senna Armstrong. So this is just a lecture with some background concepts and distinctions that you will need to make sense of the readings in this unit. And some of these notions are also going to come up on the quiz. So I will be posting these slides as well. Okay, so the agenda. We're going to go over a little bit of just factual background on climate change, just to set some common ground. This will also put us in the position to kind of have in place the key assumptions that Senna Armstrong and Banks are working with. And then, like I said, we'll be reviewing a few of the distinctions and concepts that will come up in the readings and that you'll need to know for the unit quiz. Okay, so this is actually just a slide with some links. If you want to read anything about current stuff that's happening with climate change, all three of these links are quite useful. I just want to show you this third link is something that came out in New York Times Magazine recently, and it's kind of visually cool, but also a little terrifying. So if you want to be convinced that climate change is going to cause a lot of human problems, this is a good place to start. So let me just show you the first graphic, and I'll let you explore on your own later on. Okay, so hopefully you can see this well. Today, 1% of the world is in a barely livable climate, is a hot zone, which is this. Let us fast forward to 2070. By 2070, this barely livable hot zone is going to cover 19% of the globe. So this is where billions of people live. And this means that billions of people are going to have to move. So the question is, where will they go? This article kind of looks at some possible scenarios of what's going to happen when people start to have to migrate in mass due to climate change. Okay, so like I said, you can explore these links on your own. They're super interesting. So we're just going to assume for the remainder of the unit on climate change that global warming is caused by humans, that it will cause harm to human beings who are not yet alive and also who are currently alive. There's a typo in this, so I'll change that for the posted version. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I did put it in. So the point is that for a long time, it was part of the debate on climate change, whether or not we can make sense of harms done to human beings who are not yet alive today, and whether we could have obligations to protect human beings who are not yet alive today. And now, because climate change is affecting people who are currently alive, that sort of mystery falls out of the debate. So in the papers we'll read, it's going to be assumed that climate change is going to cause harm to human beings who all are already alive. And that helps to remove a few of the puzzles that were occupying us in the philosophical debate for a while. And note also that the arguments we'll consider are not going to rely on the claim that it's bad to cause the extinction of other species, that it's bad to destroy beautiful environments, and so on. Although those claims may also be true, we're simply looking at the effects that climate change is going to have on humans. Okay, so that's the factual background. Let us now look at a few of the distinctions and concepts that are going to come up in the readings. So these are things you'll need to have a grip on to make sense of the readings for this unit. So the first is the distinction between necessary and sufficient conditions. Sinnott Armstrong is the reading you should have already done for today, and he's going to make several important claims about necessary and sufficient conditions. For example, he'll say things like this: my individual act is neither necessary nor sufficient for global warming. As you've already seen, he's talking about his individual act of driving a gas guzzler just for fun. So what does this mean? What does it mean to say that an act is neither necessary nor sufficient for something else? Well, if you say that, let's just call the things that we're talking about X and Y as placeholders. If you say X is necessary for Y, that just means that that Y cannot happen without X happening. If X is necessary for Y, then Y cannot happen without X happening. What about the sufficiency claim? Well, if X is sufficient for Y, then if X happens, Y is also guaranteed to happen. So this is a little bit abstract so far. Let's just look at some actual examples. Suppose I say oxygen is necessary for fire. This is a true claim. You can't have fire unless you have oxygen. What if I say being in California is a necessary condition on being in San Diego? That is also true. You cannot be in San Diego without also being in California. Here's another one. Turning in some assignments is necessary for passing this class. If you don't turn in any assignments, you can't pass this class. How about this one? Being in San Diego is necessary for being in California. That one should strike you as false, right? Because you can be in California without being in San Diego. You might be in San Francisco. Let's look at some examples of statements making claims about sufficient conditions. Being in San Diego is sufficient for being in California. This is true, right? If you're in San Diego, then you are guaranteed to also be in California. The presence of fire is sufficient for the presence of oxygen. This also is true. If there's fire present, then you know that there is also oxygen present, that's a guarantee. How about this one? Getting an 85% or higher on all assignments is a sufficient condition for passing the course. This is also true, right? If you get an 85% or higher on all assignments, then it's guaranteed that you're going to pass the course. Maybe you would want a higher grade than that, but that would constitute passing the course. How about this one? Turning in some assignments is sufficient for passing the course. Again, here I've given you an example of a false claim about a sufficient condition. You could turn in some assignments and still fail the course, meaning turning in some assignments does not guarantee that you'll pass the course. Because, right, if you turn in 2 assignments, you've turned in some, but you could very well fail the course if you only turn in 2, or even if you turn in all of the assignments and your grades are so low that you still don't pass the course. Okay, now a lot of claims about necessary and sufficient conditions can be formulated as if-then claims. So anytime you see an if-then claim or a conditional claim, you're seeing a claim about necessary and sufficient conditions. So let's look at this one. If there is fire, then there is oxygen. Well, the antecedent, if there's fire, is the sufficient condition, and the consequent, there is oxygen, is the necessary condition. So this says the presence of fire, sorry about that typo, is sufficient for the presence of oxygen, and oxygen is necessary for fire. Here's another one. If you're in San Diego, then you're in California. Well, this is saying that being in San Diego is sufficient for being in California, and being in California is necessary for being in San Diego. So what we see here is whenever you have an if-then statement, So we're going to again use the placeholders if x and the x and y for whatever's in the antecedent and y for whatever's in the consequent. Whenever you have a case like this, you know that the x, what I've underlined in blue here, is a sufficient condition. And the y, what I've underlined in red here, is the necessary condition. This is a general rule for conditional statements. Okay, that was the first distinction that you need to know. Switching gears, now I'd like to talk about the term begging the question. This is another term that you will see in your first reading. You should have seen already in the Sinnott-Armstrong reading. And the way that philosophers use this term is a little bit different from the way that sometimes you might hear the term used in the news, or even sometimes it's different from the way that you might use the term. So we need to get clear on what this term means in philosophy. Okay, when I say to you something like this, when you say that, you really beg the question, what do I mean? Well, in philosophy, is this a good thing? Does it mean that you've pointed to an interesting question or that you've pointed to a question? The answer in philosophy, sadly, is no. You cannot use the term beg the question to mean raise the question. It does not mean that. Instead, begging the question refers to a particular kind of argumentative mistake. If somebody tells you that you have just begged the question, that is not a good thing. It means that you've made an argumentative mistake. Okay, so what is this argumentative mistake? Broadly speaking, it means that you're in the middle of a discussion or argument with somebody, and each is trying to convince the other of their position. If you beg the question, that it means that you have assumed precisely what you are trying to prove. Rather than giving an argument for the thing you're trying to prove, you've accidentally just assumed that it's true. That's not good. So let me give you an example to make this clear. Suppose you want to prove to someone that they should believe in God. You say to them, here's your argument. I know God exists because my priest told me, and I read it in the Bible. Okay, so we can write this argument in sort of numbered premises leading to a conclusion, and this will help us show why this is a question-begging argument. So this argument essentially relies on reasoning something like this. Premise 1, the Bible says that God exists. This is an unstated premise, but the speaker needs this premise to be for the argument to work. Premise 2, whatever the Bible says is true. Conclusion, therefore God exists. So as you should be able to see, somebody who doesn't already believe in God wouldn't buy this argument, right? Why is that? Well, if you didn't already believe in God, you wouldn't think that what the Bible says is true. And this way, for this argument to convince somebody that God exists, they would have to already believe that God exists. You've appealed to an assumption in your argument that a non-believer in God couldn't be expected to accept, namely the assumption that what the Bible says is true, because you wouldn't believe that assumption unless you already believed the argument's conclusion. So this argument is question begging because it relies on the conclusion it's trying to prove. All right, let's look at another example. Suppose I tell you this. I say, killing is wrong and abortion is killing, so abortion is wrong. So I would like to suggest that this too is a question-begging argument, and because it's a question-begging argument, it's not a good argument, it's a bad argument. So how is it question-begging? Well, the conclusion this person is trying to prove is that abortion is wrong. Now, if they agree to the assumption that abortion is killing, they're not going to agree to the assumption that all instances of killing are wrong. Presumably, the person that agrees that abortion is wrong, the person that believes that abortion is not wrong, does not believe that killing is always wrong. They believe that abortion is one of the cases in which killing is not wrong. So asking them to agree to the assumption that killing is always wrong, which is essentially what this is saying, is to beg the question. All right, so when you're reading the Senator Armstrong paper, and he says that a particular argument is not effective because it is question begging, pause to make sure you see why it's question begging. And also ask yourself whether you think he's right when he says that it's question begging. This is an important check for yourself to make sure that you're understanding the moves in the argument. So ask yourself, when Senator Armstrong says that his opponent is making a question-begging argument, ask yourself exactly what claim he thinks his opponent is making that opponent couldn't expect him to accept. Why is he accusing them of begging the question? Okay, on to term 3. This term will not come up until next week when you read the Melanie Banks paper, but I want to include it in this introductory lecture because there won't be another review of concepts lecture next week. Okay, so Melanie Banks is going to say that she's giving a reductive account of responsibility for climate change, of collective responsibility for climate change, and I want you to just know what it means to say that you're giving a reductive account of something. All right, so here's a toy example that will illustrate this general idea. Here's a group of people. This is many, many stickies, and the stickies form a nation, which we're going to call nation S. Now, suppose I want to know how intelligent is nation S, and there are two options. One option is to say that the intelligence of nation S reduces to the intelligence of the individuals in it. So if this is correct, then if the nation is intelligent, I can infer that the individuals in the nation are intelligent too, or at least enough of them are intelligent to support the intelligence of the nation. This is a weird example, I know, but I just want to give you a toy case to make the idea clear. Okay, so this is a reductive account of the intelligence of nation S. I say the intelligence of the whole nation reduces to the intelligence of the individuals in it. Here's a different account I might give. I might say that the intelligence of nation S does not reduce to the intelligence of the individuals in it. And there are a lot of different ways I could go here, but maybe I'll say something like, well, the intelligence of the nation is determined instead by the intelligence of its laws, which has nothing to do with the intelligence of the individuals. If the laws are intelligent, then the nation is intelligent. Or I might say, maybe it turns out that nation S is run by supercomputers, and those supercomputers explain why the nation is intelligent. That would be a totally different account of the intelligence of nation S. But it would not reduce to the intelligence of the individuals. Another alternative, which would be kind of hard to understand, but you might say that a sort of extreme version of a non-reductive account of the intelligence of nation S would say that you can't explain the intelligence of nation S in terms of anything else. It doesn't reduce to the intelligence of the individuals. It doesn't reduce to the intelligence of the laws. It doesn't reduce to the intelligence of the supercomputers. That would be a sort of extreme non-reductivism about the intelligence of the nation. Okay. Two more terms. These two terms will be ones that come up throughout the duration of the course. So like I said, I'm going to post these slides because I want you to be able to, not have to rewatch the whole video every time you want a review of what these terms mean. So, don't worry about writing this down. The slides will be up. So one term is epistemic. You should know these terms if you've taken other philosophy courses, but sometimes it's just hard to keep track of everything. So a review is important. Okay, so something epistemic in general means pertaining to knowledge. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. So here are some examples of sentences using the term epistemic. I believe this will come up in at least the Melanie Banks paper. It might come up in the Senna Armstrong paper too. So you will see something like, there's an epistemic condition on moral responsibility. If you don't know that your action will cause a bad outcome, you can't be responsible for that bad outcome. So this is an example of the term epistemic being put to use. Here's another kind of claim you might see. It's epistemically bad to believe everything you read on the internet. So this means that it's bad from the point of view of your knowledge, right? Epistemically bad to believe everything you read on the internet. All right, I believe this is our last term, metaphysical. This doesn't just mean woo-woo, it means something else. So metaphysical means, broadly speaking, it's a little bit hard to define, but pertaining to what exists, pertaining to what grounds what. This is a term that is used frequently in metaphysics, pertaining to the nature of reality, to being. So metaphysics is not about what we know, but rather about what there is. So here are some terms that some sentences you might see in this course. Non-reductive accounts of collective responsibility are metaphysically weird. Descartes has a dualist metaphysics. You actually won't see that in this course because we will not be talking about Descartes, and we will not be doing much metaphysics, but that's the kind of claim you might see with the term metaphysics in it. Here's another. Do we really want to have to figure out the metaphysics of causation? So you will actually be seeing a number of philosophers make metaphysical claims about causation. That just means claims about the nature of causation, claims about what causation is. Okay, so that is the end of this introductory lecture. The next lecture, lecture 2.2, will be on Senna Armstrong's arguments concerning individual responsibility for climate change. So I will see you momentarily in that lecture.